There is a hidden history that's been deliberately obfuscated from the peoples of the world. That's why I am on the trail up in Nephilim. I am your intrepid host coming to you from an undisclosed location somewhere deep in the heart of the Santa Monica Mountains. We're going to be talking about DNA. And this is our Watchers film. This is at least 10 years old now, produced by my late business partner and director of all the Watchers film, Richard Shaw. Miss him, but Gil Zimmerman now is our business partner, and we've done 10 films together, all on the UFO stuff. So, we're continuing to work here. So I'm going to read this article here, but you can see on camera too. But then I'm going to show clips from On the Trail of the Nephilim, where we do all the DNA testing. I think you'll find that absolutely fascinating. I know I do. So buckle up, stay tuned. We'll see you. But first, a word from our very trusted sponsor. Folks, the feds are out of options. Rate cuts, money printing, balance sheet reversals. They call it policy, but it's really panic. This is endgame economics, where hope replaces discipline and the illusion of control finally breaks. They're not cutting rates because things are strong. They're cutting because the system is cracking. Inflation's eating your savings. The labor market's stalling. Confidence in the dollar is fading fast. For decades, the Fed built a house of paper. Now they're striking the match that could burn it down, leaving you and me to pay the price. Every cycle ends the same way: bubbles, bailouts, and broken retirements. That's why smart investors are moving what's real: gold and silver. When's the last time you actually held the wealth you spent your life working for? Folks, my friends at Noble Gold Investments have been helping Americans move from paper wealth into real, tangible assets. Numbers on a screen can disappear. Physical gold and silver, they've outlasted every crisis in history. Folks, please check out noblegoldinvestments.com, noblegoldinvestments.com. Get your free wealth protection kit today, noblegoldinvestments.com. Discover how simple it is to protect your future. Thank you so much for coming here. Thank you for your patronage. Thank you for becoming a member. Thank you for coming here every day. Just so you know, we do a new show every single day here, 7 days a week, 365 days, because so much is going on. And I'm in my studio here in an undisclosed location somewhere deep in the heart of the Santa Monica Mountains, and I can just get in here and get the work done, and that's what we do. If you've got stories, if you have a link, shoot me a link to an article or a YouTube, because I can't be every place at once. There's only one who can do that, and he's up there. But he does direct my steps. I know he directs your steps. So we look to him for direction. We look to him to focus on certain things. I think you'll find this interesting. By the way, if you're not a member, consider becoming a member. You get members-only content. You get 10% off on everything in the store. And, of course, you get our monthly news magazine. So this is an X-post. In the DNA of the first peoples of North America, researchers found something strange. A signal called haplogroup X, a maternal lineage almost absent in Asia, but faintly present in Europe and the Near East. How could a genetic branch skip Siberia and appear on both sides of the Atlantic? Well, I don't have the answer to that, and this is why we keep doing what we do. What I do find interesting here is, dare I say, could this be traces of a Nephilim? We don't know. Look at where right here. I'll make that a little bit bigger so you can see it. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, and so something is going on. And there are two positions that you can hold in anthropological circles and archaeological circles. If you're a diffusionist, which I am, you believe that people traveled. The Phoenicians traveled. I believe the Phoenicians were over here in the Americas. I do. And we have proof of that in our films on the America Stonehenge, where we find this stone. It's the Baal stone, to Baal and dedication, to Baal of the Canaanites and dedication. What is that doing in New Hampshire? That stone was found in what they call the Chamber of Ruins, buried about 2 feet underground. So, we've got proof of that. We've got the Kensington Runestone. What the heck is that doing there? So there is a hidden history. I keep saying this. And as a diffusionist, we believe that people travel. In our film, on the trail of a Nephilim. We show this clip of Thor Heyerdahl, and I've talked about this before. He leaves basically from this area, the Straits of Gibraltar. No map, no compass. He just puts up the sail. Let's see where it goes. Guess where he winds up? He winds up over here, the island of Barbados. That's the New World. And that's, I believe they were here far in advance of Christopher Columbus. I believe Columbus had information, and this is conjecture. I believe Columbus had information, documents from these very early voyages, and that's how he got there. Because he knew something that he was holding very close to the vest. He knew about the New World. So the whole idea of, well, we're going to sail to India or look for, I just not buying it. But we don't know. But here's the deal. So you have this strange haplogroup showing up in these places. Well, as a diffusionist, I believe that people travel, that they sail. So isolationists believe that people don't go anywhere. And the isolationist paradigm is held pretty much sacrosanct in anthropological circles, archaeological circles. That is what people are taught. But I'm a diffusionist. Mother Gonzalez is a diffusionist. Brad Hite is a diffusionist. Heather Coons is a diffusionist. I'm Fritz Zimmerman. My gosh, without Fritz, I wouldn't be here. Seriously. Hats off to Mr. Fritz. That his book changed my life, and I've talked about that. Set me on the trail. For Fritz is in many of our films in the On the Trail of a Nephilim series. And Fritz is an ardent diffusionist, as we all are. People travel. People get up and go, gee, I'm next to this river. I wonder where it goes. Let's build a canoe, and off we go, right? And so we believe that what we're looking at is a diffusion of people throughout the centuries. So now I'm going to go, and I'm going to show you something here.
This cannot be a human being. It has to be something else.
We don't have that in our features.
You can't push that back in anatomy. You can't do any kind of head manipulation to do that. And both of these guys have it.
This could be a result of a genetic anomaly or genetic manipulation.
So this has to be genetic.
This is almost like a whole new mutation line.
Yes, it's definitely a genetic anomaly.
It is about a third, 30% larger.
And that's why it has to be genetic. Right. It has to be a genetic difference.
You cannot create this with pressures.
I think we're looking at a whole different species.
Would this particular entity have more brain power than a normal human being?
Mm-hmm. And this you cannot make by more creating the skull.
This is definitely something that is genetic.
Another genetic anomaly.
An ancient prophetic text found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, known as the Book of Enoch, states that a group of watcher angels, 200 in number, descended in the days of Jared on Mount Hermon.
Knowing full well the penalty they would receive for what they were about to do, they made what was essentially a suicide pact and did the unthinkable. They took human wives and had children by them.
This unholy union created a hybrid being, part angel, part human, known as the Nephilim. These watcher angels and their unholy offspring populated the earth. The Watcher Angels also sinned against the animal kingdom, created centaurs, minotaurs, and other abominations known as chimeras. The Nephilim began to eat and drink the flesh and blood of humans, and at this point, the Ancient of Days, the God of the Bible, intervened and flooded the earth. Everything that had breath perished in this great flood, except for 8 people and the animals that they had put on the ark they had been instructed to make. However, these ancient texts tell us that there was another incursion of these watcher angels after the flood, and the hybrid being known as the Nephilim were once again seen on the earth. For it is written that the Nephilim were on the earth and also afterwards, when the angels took wives and had children by them.
The Jewish historian Flavius Josephus, who wrote in the 1st century AD, said this:
There were, till then, left the race of giants, who had bodies so large and countenances so entirely different from other men, that they were surprising to the sight and terrible to the hearing. The bones of these men are still shown to this very day, unlike to any credible relations of other men. First Nation people...
I want to stop it right there. And I've talked about this before. This is really important. So we just heard that Josephus, that quote from Josephus, that their countenances were so different from normal men. You have to understand something, and this is really important. I can't say it enough because, new people come here and they're not familiar with a lot of our work, 33 films, 14 books as a corpus of work here, all the lectures I've done over the years. So when Jesus warns us in the Matthew 24, Luke 21, Mark 13 narrative, the synoptic gospels, he says, it'll be like the days of Noah when I return. Well, that's a very loaded question. First of all, what do you mean when you return, right? Where are you going? Hello? But like the days of Noah, everybody in earshot, everyone who can hear Jesus's words, they know exactly what he's talking about. They know exactly what he's talking about. Why? We just saw. Josephus wrote that at the time of Jesus, the 1st century, the bones of the Nephilim were openly on display in Jerusalem. What does that mean? Goliath, right? Possibly Goliath and his brothers, openly on display. Why did they do that? Because these are the vestiges of the Nephilim. These bones are the remnants of the Nephilim, what Israel's ancestors conquered in the Promised Land hundreds of years before the time of Jesus. Let that sink in. Everyone knew exactly what Jesus is talking about. The commingling of the seed war, Genesis 3:15. So the Sethite theory, which is now taught in our seminaries and other places, was invented in the 4th century by, I say this with all due lack of respect, Julius Africanus, the knucklehead Julius Africanus, who just makes this thing up. And that is what is taught to pastors coming up, wannabe pastors, seminaries, whatever, which is completely bogus. It goes against everything the Bible tells us, in my opinion. It goes against what Josephus wrote about. The bones of the Nephilim are openly on display. There is no Sethite theory when Jesus says it'll be like the days of Noah. Everyone knows exactly what he's talking about. So what are we looking at? Why? Because it hails back to the Genesis 3:15 narrative, the mingling of the seed. Then you say, well, were we in the days of Noah? Heck yeah. Our film on abductions, shameless plug, but there it is. 10 DVDs. We're the only Christian ministry that I'm aware of that has 10 films on the whole UFO phenomena. Our film on abductions talks about the mingling of the seed. 2 men, 2 women. Sperm is taken from the men, ovum is taken from the women. Hybrids are being created. There's no doubt about this. We are in the days of Noah right now. The question is, how long does this continue? I have no idea. Maybe we go up next Wednesday, but I'm out of date setter. Okay, let's continue here. You'll notice that Native Americans talk about the red-haired, 6-fingered giants that roam the land. And yet all that's swept under the rug, nothing to see here, no matter how much evidence we can show. And my work on Catalina Island, I discovered a 9-footer, for crying out loud. A 9-footer. What's that doing there? Anyway, let me run the film. Here we go.
The Americas tell us that a race of red-haired, six-fingered giants who were cannibalistic that inhabited the land and would raid their villages, ripping the heads of the braves and drinking their blood. Large skeletons were exhumed in the Americas, which seemed to point to the validity of the Native American oral tradition. Elongated skulls are found all over the earth. While they are not giants, they may be the vestiges of one of the Nephilim tribes known as the Anakim, which translates as long necks. Join us as we delve into the mysterious, elongated skulls of Peru.
In 2013, I was watching a YouTube video which showed researcher Brian Forrester in the Paracas History Museum in Paracas, Peru. Forrester was taking elongated skulls out of a display case and holding them up to a camera as he pointed out what appeared to be anomalies in the skulls. This video led to my hypothesis that the elongated skulls may have been the remnants of the biblical Nephilim. The hypothesis was based on the historical fact that roughly 3,500 years ago, when Joshua and Caleb pressed the conquest of Canaan in the Levant, or the Middle East, there were Nephilim tribes dwelling in the land. These tribes were known as the Rephaim, the Zamzumim, the Anakim, and of course the Nephilim. I wondered whether some of these tribes may have fled the armies of Joshua and perhaps found their way to Peru. I contacted Forrester and he informed me that I was welcome to come down to Paracas to see the skulls for myself. So in 2013, we met at the first expedition to the Paracas Museum. Richard Shaw filmed the adventure, which became the basis of the award-winning film Watcher 6, The Secret Has Begun. Joe Taylor from the Mount Blanco Museum was part of the original team. Joe created the one-to-one molds of the Paracas skulls that you will see throughout this film. Judd Burton was our team's first archaeologist. Ron Moorheck was an adventurer who has authored 2 books and was also part of our team. In 2014, we mounted another expedition with archaeologist Aaron Judkins. Aaron assisted Joe Taylor on unwrapping what turned out to be a 1,935-year-old mummy skull, with Senior Juan Navarro hired in the museum. This was unprecedented and offered our team an opportunity to collect fresh DNA material. I had started a lengthy permit process to take out samples from the country legally to do DNA testing. The process was slow going, and in fact had grinded to a complete stop. Frustrated, I posted a help wanted ad on my blog and received several emails from archaeologists who stated they would be able to help with the permit process. Enter Armando Gonzalez, who joined our team and created the complex paperwork necessary to obtain the legal permits from the Minister of Culture. Through a connection from Brian Forrester, Armando was able to contact Ruben Garcia Soto, who was an archaeologist working at the Ica Museum. At this point, Mondo enlisted Patricia Argalas, an archaeologist from Spain. Mondo and Patricia created 3 hypotheses that the team wanted to test. Our first hypothesis was this: are the Paracas people indigenous to Peru? In other words, how does the DNA of the Paracas skull compare with other known tribes, such as the Inca or the Wari? Are they unique or similar? Mondo and I wanted to see if the elongation was due to genetic anomalies or the result from cranial deformation, or what is more commonly known as cranial headboarding. After the formal request from Mondo and Patricia was submitted to the Ministry of Culture in Peru, a year passed by with seemingly no progress. Mondo and I were frustrated as the team had jumped through all of the hoops, but seemingly to no avail. Then, out of nowhere, I received an email from Peruvian archaeologist Ruben Garcia Soto, who had stated that now we had permission to come and collect the samples, but we had a narrow window of time to do so. Our team had only 1 month to plan the trip, book the airfare, hotels, and transportation. Our team consisted of myself, Richard Shaw, Mando Gonzalez, and Shiz Klodsky, who was hired to bag and tag the DNA samples. Our team flew to Peru and had access to 18 skulls from which to extract the DNA from. Bone, hair, and teeth were taken and put in paper envelopes for processing. Mondo wanted to do a level of redundancy in the testing, so if the bone were not sequenced in the DNA lab, perhaps a tooth or hair would. The team had a total of 18 skulls and took 58 samples. Of the 18, 9 were from the Ica Museum. The other 9 were from Senior Juan Navarro's Paracas History Museum, as well as private collections in the United States. This was done illegally, with the proper permits from the Ministry of Culture. Mondo and I flew back to Peru to collect the samples. I carried the letters of transit stamped with the official seal, as well as a letter from the Ministry of Culture, and flew back to the United States with the DNA samples. I sent the samples to the Paleo DNA Lab in Canada, and the results were incredible and bolstered our team's hypothesis that these mysterious, elongated people may have come from somewhere in Europe or the Middle East. The DNA from the Ica Museum, as well as the Paracas History Museum, also pointed to a European and Middle Eastern origin. This film is the aftermath of 6 years of research and hundreds of thousands of dollars. It will set the record straight as to how the DNA was extracted, processed, and interpreted. Moreover, it will show that these skulls are not the result of cranial headboarding, or what is more commonly known as cranial deformation, but are in fact genetic. Finally, we will present the overwhelming evidence that the enigmatic Paracas people did not originate in Peru, but perhaps in the Middle East, and this may in fact rewrite history as we know it. Folks, I'm going to stop it right there. I'm going to give the rest of the film to our members as a special bonus, members only. This is the kind of stuff I want to be doing with members because they help support what we do here. We're no longer doing conferences per se, unless it works out. But there are no conferences next year except the 2 Prophecy Watchers Conference. One is in Colorado Springs. The second one probably in Branson, but that's not on the books yet. But those are the 2 conferences I will be speaking at. But I do lots and lots of shows on other people's channels. So that's what we're really focusing on. So the rest of the film is going to be members only. I might do a part 2 here, but you got to realize that this is unbelievable. That we did the hard science. We had benefactors that gave us a boatload of money, which enabled us to do this. There were 3 labs that did the DNA sequencing. So, unfortunately, they'll call people like me a pseudoscientist, or a pseudo-archaeologist. Excuse me. Tell me what the difference is when I've got bona fide archaeologists and anthropologists on the team. In the film, we've got medical doctors, surgeons, chiropractors, multidisciplined people coming on, looking at the evidence and going, this is not the result of cranial deformation. It's the result of something that's genetic. And what does it do? Why does the other side of the aisle take umbrage with this? Because it points to the validity of the biblical prophetic narrative. In other words, what it points to is the fact that Nephilim were on the earth, that the Genesis 3:15 narrative is the correct one, and that there was a diaspora of these Nephilim tribes, and they went all over the world. Give me one more little thing before I leave. Sarah Winnemucca wrote about the Sitka. The Sitka were the giants in Lovelock Cave in Nevada. I've been to Lovelock Cave. It's mostly sealed off. I used to have a softbound book from 1920 where the archaeologists went in and did all this report. There were giants there, and Sarah Winnemucca talks about it. Red-haired giants that were cannibalistic. How many times do we have to hear this from different First Nation people? Why isn't it that we can't look at First Nation people's oral tradition? This is real science. The machines that do the DNA testing, they could care less what my belief system is, what my worldview is. The fact that I'm a born-again, spirit-filled Christian who believe in the supernatural world. that believes in the validity of the biblical prophetic narrative. It doesn't care about that. It's just going to take the material, it's going to sequence it, it's going to spit out the data. And that's what we went with. That's what we went with. What we discovered does rewrite history, prove us wrong. Don't sit there and be a little naysayer and go, nah, 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 nah. You know, you go down and you take your own samples. Good luck with that. We did our work. We did due diligence. And the data is the data. This is a replica created by the late Joe Taylor of what we call the baby skull. And you can see in the film that the orbits here are about 25 to 30% larger than normal. It's elongated. Look at the skull. We estimated this thing to be about 2.5, 3 years old, maybe a little bit older. And the foramen magnum was all the way to the back. What are we looking at here? It had red hair. It had reddish hair. What are we looking at? We took samples. So when we unwrapped this thing, when we unwrapped the baby skull, we took fresh samples, fresh DNA, hair, bone, stuff that fell off. Okay? No contamination here. That was at the 3 different labs. All 3 labs placed it. U2E1. That is Eastern Europe, the Middle East. That's where it is. And it bolsters our theory that these may be, I believe that they are, a remnant of some sort of a Nephilim tribe. The long necks, and the rest of the film gets into what the long necks were. There's an X-ray in the Ica Museum, which shows that the neck is very, very long. So, you know, we don't know. We don't have all the data yet. But the data that we do have shows a Middle Eastern origin. How many times do we have to do this? I'll end by saying this. There is a hidden history that's been deliberately obfuscated from the peoples of the world, and that's why I am on the trail of the Nephilim. Consider becoming a member. If you want to watch the film, you can go to streaming.lamarzulli.net, streaming.lamarzulli.net. For $4.99, you can watch the rest of it. I hope that whets your appetite. You know, I haven't watched that film in a while, and brings back a lot of great memories. We'll see you again tomorrow with another show. Thanks for watching. Consider becoming a member. There is a hidden history that's been deliberately obfuscated from the peoples of the world, and that's why I am on the trail of the Nephilim.